Welcome to Walk the Talk, the webcast where we encourage you to put us in your ears, get outside and walk whilst we talk. This session is specifically aimed to support business leaders, HR professionals, and anyone in the workplace when it comes to supporting the well-being and mental health of themselves and those around them. But a little disclaimer alert before we do get going. Many of those things we will be discussing today are just as relevant outside of the workplace when it comes to focusing your time, your energy, your attention to support our well-being and mental health through the winter months and, of course, beyond. So hopefully at the end of it, we will all be thinking a little bit differently and we will all be walking the talk to stress less and smile more this winter. So my name is Sean, and I'm one of the coaches and co-founders of Point 3 Wellbeing, and I'll be hosting today's conversation. But what do we have in store today? Over the next 45 minutes, we're going to look at how we can support ourselves in the workplace and outside of it to thrive as the temperature drops and we navigate the notoriously challenging winter months. The good news is that there are many small, simple, and effective ways that we can introduce to stay healthy, happy, and high achieving. But just because they are small and simple doesn't mean that we are necessarily doing those things. Now, it has been said that languishing is the overriding emotion of 2021. And whilst this certainly isn't specific to the winter season, no doubt the impacts of languishing will only increase on our lost sense of productivity and motivation during the upcoming winter months. But what is languishing? For those of you who haven't come across this, it's a sense of stagnation and emptiness. It feels as if you're muddling through your days. You're looking at your life through a foggy windshield. I like to describe it as feeling blah or meh, not particularly energized, not particularly on it. And we at Point 3 Wellbeing are finding when we are speaking with business leaders, HR professionals, managers, wellbeing team leads, and of course, seeing it in ourselves, it's no wonder that the energy levels, that collective spark, is dipping within teams and organization as the pandemic draws on. So I'm now going to introduce you to our two incredible guests that we've got on today's show. So first up, I'd like to introduce you to Dr. Kat Lederle. She is a doctor of human circadian psychology and behavior. To you and me, she's a sleep doctor. She is an amazing sleep specialist, helping busy professionals sleep well, feel good, and thrive. She's a speaker and author of Sleep Sense, and it's a pleasure having her on today. Kat, say hello to our audience.
Hello, lovely to be here and looking forward to our conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kat, and great to have you. And Kate, and as I have said at the start before we've gone into this, I'm definitely going to be tongue twisting these two names, Kat and Kate. So apologies if I do in advance. But over to Kate Chafer. She is a senior digital marketing manager at Electrolux, whilst also being the wellbeing and mental health pioneer within the workplace. And without a doubt, a productive high achiever in the workplace. And I've had the pleasure of calling Kate a client on a variety of projects, both in Point 3 Wellbeing guise and in previous guises for nearly a decade. So Kate, it's awesome to have you on the show today.
Thanks very much for that, Sean. That was a wonderful introduction. So yeah, very glad to be here as well. Thanks for inviting me.
Well, I'm here to do your PR and your marketing for you today. So today we'll be asking questions such as, why might productivity in the workplace drop during winter months? And you know what, is this a bad thing? And what can we do to support our well-being and mental health through the winter on an individual level and of course a business level? Now let's consider the winter months. December is of course a time of festivities for many, a busy calendar often filled with celebrations, gatherings, and a few mulled wines. Then we move into the new year, new you, fresh start. We've heard it all before, a time to set those resolutions and those goals ahead. However, in the workplace, at least, it might suggest that we are potentially stalling, or at least our productivity levels might be decreasing. In today's conversation, we hope it will inspire you to maintain a healthy balance through the months ahead, whatever that looks like for you on an individual level. So before I throw a few questions over to our guests, I'm just going to set the scene with regards to productivity in those winter months. Now, as I've said, winter is supposedly our least productive season. What you'll see in front of you is some research that's been carried out by Forbes magazine alongside a software company called Red Booth. Now, the company analysed their data over a 4-year period and found that users completed 22.8% of their tasks in winter on average, compared to 27.3% in the autumn. And they broke down the data month by month too. Now, October was the most productive month on average, with 9.5% of users reporting they had completed most tasks. Compare that to December, 8%, January, 7.2%, and February, 7.6%. And you can see a clear productivity drop over the colder months. So, first question, and I'm going to throw this over to Kate. So, tell me about how you're currently working. Are you in the remote, the hybrid, or in the office? And do you notice personally any drop in productivity over those winter months?
Yes, it's a really interesting topic, actually. We're currently working remotely where we can. Obviously, some parties of some areas of the business can't do that, such as our call centre agents, although there is still a hybrid approach in some cases. So, yeah, we're largely at home, sat in my office currently. And yeah, we have the option to go in if we'd like to, or we have a specific meeting to catch up with people on, which is actively encouraged because I don't know about you, but there's nothing about seeing people face to face now and again. It gives me energy. In terms of, I've forgotten the second part of the question, Sean.
In terms of kind of, do you sense personally some of your own productivity dropping during the winter months?
Thanks for that. Do you know what? I'm going to be honest. I do, because I think you have this sense that you've got lots to do before the end of the year. You're racing towards Christmas, let's be honest. Your social calendar becomes a bit busier. And then you head into, January, into those winter months as well. And then you've got this overwhelm of lots of things to achieve and get sorted and get started. And it almost sets you back a little bit, because I think you're feeling, or I personally feel, wow, there's a lot to do, and you tend to flick from task to task, which I think reduces your productivity and your focus sometimes. So I think that's how I feel at the moment. And there's lots of things we've got to look forward to at the moment, and seeing family is one of them after such a difficult year. So yeah, that's kind of probably my succinct thoughts on that.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Kate. And Kat, have you got any thoughts on kind of your own personal kind of productivity levels during the winter, as someone that specializes, of course, in one of the foundational pillars of well-being, sleep? How do you find the winter months kind of impact you on a personal level?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good question. When I saw the diagram with the peak of productivity in autumn, right, I thought, yeah, that's true, because I'm born in autumn, right? So I like the autumn. I like the winter. So I've been reflecting on, do I notice personally a dip there? And I'm not entirely sure, but I do notice it sort of December and January. There is definitely a change, and it makes sense, because we're seasonal beings. We're like, in that sense, like no other animal. The only difference for us is we've got this artificial light, and so it kind of warps everything. But it makes absolute sense that we have sort of a dip in productivity. Yeah. So in essence, what you're kind of saying, like, and to read between the lines a little bit, with that seasonal being, kind of almost you could consider this as our time to allow ourselves to hibernate a little bit. Yeah, and rest, right, and sort of regain strength.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, if we I think we have this image of ourselves, we like machines, and we can work 24/7 non-stop. But that isn't the case. We need our daily rest phase, right? Every day. And so across the seasons, it's no surprise that we have something very similar, just sort of a downtime. And I think we would be much better off if we embraced it as such, rather than kind of give ourselves a hard time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, from our perspective as kind of business owners and folks that are working with so many other organizations, we are certainly feeling the effects of another Well, it's been a fun year, but it's also been no doubt a challenging year. So much uncertainty, so much unknown. And yeah, we are feeling a little bit fatigued. We're feeling mentally a little bit drained. And we certainly at point 3, we hold our hands up and we say, you know what, we're slowing down a little bit. By hook and by crook, we're going to get to the end of the year, but we are certainly slowing down a little bit. And for us, we've made the business decision that that's kind of okay. But of course, in some bigger organizations, it may be the case that that type of conversation hasn't been discussed. So, Kate, I'd love to throw a question over to you. Kind of in the workplace, as someone that's, you know, a high achiever yourself, you're a manager. Should we be expected to be productive or thriving, however we want to call it, all year round, do you think?
No. Is the short answer. I think we have natural, as Kat said, we have natural peaks and troughs. And as someone who loves the summer, I'm a July born baby, so that is the time I thrive, and I know that. So the things that I try and put in place, especially, and my team, you know, you have things like people taking annual leave a lot, so it's a bit, people are in and out of the business. That makes things a little more challenging and less productive because you don't have the right people in your meetings, etc., to get some jobs done. So I don't think it's any bad thing. And also, you know, the things like the physical things, the coughs, the colds, the COVID scares, etc., you have at this time of year naturally just make you physically feel not as productive and not as mentally clear as I think we are at different times of the year when we're in a different headspace. So no, and it's something, you know, this time of year I try with my team to make sure I'm injecting some fun into what we're doing. You know, we have lots of different activities within Electrolux, but also making sure, you know, I do buy them a little Christmas gift to say thank you, or I do try and see them and take them out for a meal to say thank you for what they've done this year. Those little things actually make big differences to people in times where maybe they go, oh, I'm not getting what I need to get done quite as quickly as I normally would. And I'm very encouraging, saying, don't worry about it, it's okay. As long as we're getting the core business things done that we need to at this time of year and planning, then that's okay.
I think that's really interesting, actually. 2 points here. You've both mentioned, well, Kat, you're a autumn baby. Kate, you're a summer baby. You both know when you're performing at your highest level. I wonder, as managers, are we asking our teams and getting them to consider when is their most productive season, and actually when do they need that time to recharge? Because we'll all be individual. It is interesting. And then the other thing that you've mentioned there, Kate, just that final point, which I thought was really interesting, is actually this is a time for planning. And I think that's really interesting. When we consider performance, maybe certainly in modern day society, we put productivity and performance together. But actually, purpose and performance are just as powerful. And sometimes purpose can maybe come at the expense of productivity, because we're not just ticking off our to-do list. It's bigger thinking for the year ahead potentially. So I think that's really interesting what you've just said there. And I think just defining performance as productivity could impact us kind of negatively. So kind of as we move, of course, into these winter months, you know, we are literally just kind of rolling into December now. The temperature is certainly dropping. Kind of, I think priorities are changing. Kat, would you be able to shine some further light on what might be going on physically, mentally, and emotionally for us as we move into this next kind of season, the winter season?
Yeah, I think, like I said, you know, we are biological systems. We are sort of, you know, like in that sense, like animals. So there is a slowing down, but sort of probably when it comes to maybe the sort of emotional side of things, maybe also mental health, the lack of sunlight is having an impact on us. Not, well, I just said mentally and emotionally, but also physiologically, and so that has to do with our inner body clock, which is a group of cells that sits up in our brain. And that group of cells, the body clock, tells the rest of the body what time it is, and in a way, what it has to do next and what it doesn't need to do. Now, our body needs to be aligned with the outside world. right? It needs to know what's going on in the outside world so that it will do the right thing. And what has evolved that we use light, particularly sunlight, as a way to let our inner body clock in the brain know whether it is daytime or nighttime. And now the change in season, where we have less of the sunlight, brings about changes for the body. And for some people, it can lead to what's called seasonal affective disorder, or SAD, which is a form of depression, but it is just happening in the winter months. And then as the days get longer in spring, it goes away again, only to come back around November, December. And we know it has to do with the change in day length. What exactly then sort of happens is still unknown. But we also know that doing a light therapy, so exposing yourself to bright, strong light in the morning, can help to alleviate the symptoms of depression. And that's really interesting because, again, it shows how important light is. And that is something that all of us can make use of, that piece of knowledge, whether you have SAD or not, meaning to sustain good mental health, but also physiological and physical well-being. Make sure you expose yourself to natural daylight during the day, ideally in the first half of the day in the winter. And if you struggle, because it might be, rainy day, stormy day, as we just had, buy a light box, put it up, sit next to it in the morning, the earlier in the way, the better, for half an hour, just to get your daily light dose. And there will be lots of sort of knock-on effects from that. I think for the purpose of this talk, I think what's important to mention here is it can help to boost mood, alertness, and related to that, probably feelings of energy or also motivation. And I think you mentioned something interesting, both of you there, just before, the point around purpose, having a purpose, and how that can actually, or is the much better driver for our performance and then productivity. And I think, again, just from a mood and from an energy perspective, also connecting with your sense of purpose can help you, particularly in the winter months, to continue to find that energy within you to do what matters to you and to perform.
That is so interesting. And I think it's really good just reminding ourselves that we are animals. As humans, we are animals. We are not robots. And actually, therefore, the seasons are no doubt going to have an impact in some way or another. And of course, we can look at ways to move through those times. Just out of interest, Kat, you've mentioned SAD, seasonal affective disorder. Is there any sort of studies on how many people this might affect?
Yeah, there are numbers, and they do vary a little bit, which always makes it harder then for me to remember, because it depends what latitude. But I think it's somewhere between 1% and 3%.
Okay.
Then there are also milder forms of SAD, and those numbers are higher. I think they go up. The range is between something and up to 20. So yeah, forgive me, I can never really hold.
No, don't worry. I've put you on the spot there.
Yeah, I think what's important to realize is there is sort of SAD, and then there are the milder forms, right? And they are much sort of more widespread. So we all kind of naturally can have sort of that sort of, feeling low. It's completely normal. And I think that's, how we should look at it. It's normal. Okay, so what can I do? Rather than beating ourselves up for feeling energyless or lack of motivation, or having those sugar cravings.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I certainly am guilty of occasionally diving into the Haribo in the afternoon as a way to keep me going, to keep me in my flow, and to keep that energy high. But I think that's really interesting in terms of getting outside early in the day or utilizing a light box, but to really kind of almost kickstart that natural telling the body clock that it is now the daylight, and now we kind of bring that energy.
We have one at our house. We have one that my husband and I share, and he has it in his office for part of the morning, and I sometimes steal it if I'm having one of those days. And it genuinely does. Well, I don't have SAD, but it genuinely does just liven you up a little bit and
Yeah.
just makes you feel that energy. I have to say I was a bit of a skeptic, but having done some research, it's phenomenal the difference it makes. So yeah, highly recommend.
That is quite amazing. And I just like to add that we are not sponsored by any Lightbox company for today's session. And I think the other thing just to mention is, in terms of getting outside, from all of the kind of research that I've seen, and Kat, I'm sure you'll be able to kind of potentially add to this, but in the winter months, even when the days are overcast or it's a little bit rainy, actually you do still get the benefits of the natural light, even if you can't see the sunshine. That's correct, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So indoor light levels, for most offices or homes, it's between 300 and 500 lux. On a normal sort of very bright sunny day outside, it's about 100,000, and coming to that doom and gloom day that you just mentioned, it's 10,000, right? Wow. So 10,000 on a grey day compared to if I'm lucky, 500 lux indoors, that's nothing. That's enough for us to see and have this conversation, and I can read, no problem. But for my biological clock up in the brain, which is used to much higher light levels, right? Because our ancestors evolved outside, whichever continent that might have been, but it was outside, not indoors, not in a well-insulated home. So they felt the change of the season in light levels, in temperature, all of that. And all of those provide little cues. It's just that the light is the strongest cue here.
Yeah, really interesting. So, folks, get outside as much as you can, certainly early in the day. So in terms of kind of what are the antidotes to low motivation, low mood, languishing, flow is one of those things that's really going to support us to feel like we are performing more often than not. So let's consider flow for a second. Now, this is an elusive state of absorption in a meaningful challenge or a momentary bond, where your sense of time, place, and self melts away. Now, this sounds like a lovely place to be in, but how often can we honestly say we are finding ourselves in this state day to day, certainly in our work tasks as the winter months kind of evolve around us? And it is noted that the best predictor of well-being is optimizing mindfulness in a project, a task, or an activity. So when we're mindfully engaged in that activity, we're not distracted, and we are going to be feeling quite energized by that activity. Now, productivity in the workplace might slow during the winter months, but there are, of course, a number of things we can do to ensure we're still performing well. Those small things that enable us to recharge. And I think we've talked a lot about recharging during the winter, and very much seeing this season as an opportunity to do that. Now, we usually reserve this question for the end of the conversation, but we know how important these things are to keep you in that flow state. So I'm going to throw over to Kate and Kat and ask them what their 3 well-being non-negotiables are. So I'm going to start with you, Kate, and I'm going to ask you, if you wouldn't mind, to add potentially a frequency and a duration to those things, so that you know when you can actively build them into your days. So would you be willing to share your 3 well-being non-negotiables?
I struggle to get it down to 3. I think I have more, but so number 1 for me is so I have a nearly 2-year-old, so sleep is hard to come by, but my morning coffee, when I've come back from dropping my daughter off, morning coffee with my husband, to just spend 10 minutes without our phones, without anyone emailing us, and just catch up and say hello, and how did you sleep, are you okay, what's going on in your day, are you around for lunch today? Those kinds of things, just to reconnect, is really important for me. My love language is acts of service. So what are we going to do? What have we got tasks we got to do? Those kinds of things as well are really important. So my second one is, so that's obviously daily. My second one is a weekly thing that I do. And it is every week I make sure that I have a dinner date or a catch up at someone's house or whatever with one of my best friends, and I find that energizes me and just gives me a bit of me time as a mum. Obviously that doesn't always happen very long, in the week. So yeah, that's a weekly thing, sometimes a bit more, but usually just once. And my husband has exactly the same. He has one night where he can just do whatever he wants, and I take the reins on doing dinner and all the rest of it. And the third one for me is probably a monthly thing I try and do. And I try and go swimming. I used to go swimming almost every day before I had my little girl, but obviously it's less possible now. And with COVID and everything, I got out of the routine. So at least once a month, it sounds not very much, but it's enough. I try and go for a swim, because that is that feeling of freedom, that feeling of letting go, that feeling of just focusing on what my body's doing, my breathing. I find extremely cathartic, and also, again, physically energizes me, but also mentally, I find that a very de-stressing and calming activity to do.
Amazing.
Yeah, those are my three.
Amazing. And a lot of people do suggest that swimming is quite meditative, and I think those things that you just suggested there really do align with that. Kat, would you be willing to share your 3 wellbeing non-negotiables? Yeah,
and it made me smile, because that overlap. So the cup of coffee with the husband certainly is one of my negotiables, and it hasn't happened today, so it will happen after this. Just to meet after a couple of hours work in the morning and just sort of reconnect. And I think that feeling of support, that's really what is important for me, that being connected and supported. So yeah, that happens daily. And then for me also a daily morning walk that is there, often just because of how the day plans out. It might just be 15 minutes, but it is still then 15 minutes. With the hope that later on, there'll be another chance. But so those 2 things, they happen, daily. And then the other one for me is around exercise, and that could either be, seeing the PT or cycling. And it made me just thinking, Kate, when you were talking about the swimming, I think that's sort of my equivalent is the cycle. I wonder how sort of mindful it is at times because of traffic and so on and so forth. But that sort of just moving and quite in a way rhythmically, if you get into a good stretch, I think that's really, really important. To de-stress, but also get the sense of physically being fit, physically supporting my physical health. And that is, one of the pillars of good health overall. So I think there's a feel-good factor that comes from it. Plus, right now, coming back indoors, the nice warmth, I think it's also very lovely.
Absolutely. And kind of on that fitness and the physical health, it's also shown that we feel a greater value and self-worth when we do feel like we're physically that little bit fitter. So obviously the impact is there both physically and also mentally. Yeah. And the reason that I've asked you guys to share your wellbeing non-negotiables when it comes to kind of flow and performance in the workplace, these things may feel like they're a little bit indulgent. They may feel like actually we should push them to the bottom of our priority list when we are busy in the workplace. But I would love you guys just to quickly touch on kind of how do you feel after you've actively built these things into your days, your weeks, your months? How engaged do you feel? How much do you feel like that supports you in the workplace when you are when you return to kind of your work life? So Kate, I'll throw that to you first.
Yeah, I mean, if I've had those, it's that setting up of the day. The coffee in the morning is the setup. It's okay, if I haven't done that, I feel like there's something missing, and I feel like I don't know what's happening, and it's that feeling of confusion rather than having a bit of structure. Like we're creatures of routine, really. And actually that routine for me is the thing that is almost a comfort blanket. If I don't have that, or I know we're going to talk about it, but if I haven't had a good night's sleep and all those things, I find myself floundering a little bit in the morning and going, right, I don't know where I am, I don't know what I've got to do. And some of those things I think can make you feel like you're not being productive, and from the start of the day. So I think, that's probably where my brain's at on that one. It's just making sure that setup is right, because if not, it feels like you're going to have a bad day. And there's that ominous feeling of doom that, oh gosh, it's not going to be a good day because I've not done some of those daily setup things that I need to do to make me feel productive.
So we really should be prioritizing these things and actively building them into our days. And Kat, any kind of final thoughts on that?
Well, now just to kind of contribute to that, it is exactly that. We are creatures of routine. That's what our body clock needs, right? Little time cues that happen and on a regular basis will provide your body clock with the knowledge, okay, this is where I am right now, this is what's going to come next, so I need to prepare the body. And in that way, the coffee, or for me, the morning walk, it's like, you know, the shot they fire when sprinters have their competition race, right? It kind of starts everything, and then everything else in the body knows, okay, here we are, this is going to come next. If that is missing, that activity, my morning walk, the cup of coffee, then it is a bit like, whoa, what's going on here? Where are we in time? What's going to come next? And so it can be much harder to get into the flow of things. So yeah, I think these little rituals, they all provide the body clock with timing information, whether they happen daily or every other day or once a month. Right? The clock is not just around circadian rhythms. It's not just about those 24-hour rhythms. We have lots of different rhythms. So all that matters.
I think that's so interesting. I think that kind of really nicely leads on to our kind of what can we do and offer kind of as a business in the workplace. And I think, why is that relevant? Well, actually, it can help you to support your people if you're a manager, if you're a business leader, because you can encourage them to consider what these things are. What are their well-being non-negotiables? And if you know what theirs are, then actually you can start to encourage them to engage in them. If you notice that they're maybe starting to feel low on energy, if they're maybe starting to seem like their stress levels are increasing. So it's a really nice, simple way to be able to check in with someone on that human level. But it's also worth noting that I would encourage you to spend time, maybe once a month, maybe every couple of months, just considering what are your well-being non-negotiables. Because mine change quite regularly, actually. At the moment, one of mine is, and it's going to sound really silly and little, but actually it's a really good time, once again, to kind of connect with my partner, is we sit down and we watch 20 minutes, 30 minutes of a Marvel movie each evening, or most evenings anyway. And that's just that really little thing that gives us a bit of a sense of purpose, because we're working through those things, but actually they are really important to us. And I look forward to that at the end of the day, and it motivates me during the day. So Kate, I'm going to throw over a question to you. As someone that's been so heavily involved in supporting the well-being and kind of mental health of people within your organization, are there any things that businesses can do to really support people during these winter months and of course beyond?
Yeah, I mean, I think first of all, going on from the point you made about, you know, humanity, we are all people, we have busy lives, and it's really important for businesses to get to know. As a manager, I know my team really well. I know what drives them. I know if they've had a bad day. I can tell from a Teams call if they're not having a good day, and asking twice, asking them if they're, are you okay? How's it going? How's your weekend? My leading question is always, how's your weekend been on a Monday? I always have a check-in with them. It's very informal. I'll just give them a call or have a chat with them or text them, depending on who it is, because they all have different ways of communicating and preferences. But just making sure that I know them well enough to notice those small signs that actually maybe their well-being isn't great. From a wider business organisation perspective, it's really important to have the support of, our general manager, Luke Harding, is an absolute advocate of mental health and well-being. He is just fantastic. He's supported us in a lot of the initiatives that I'll have to talk about in a minute. But having that person at the top of the tree supporting well-being as a real focus in the organisation is critical, and having that cascaded down to all of the management teams and everyone else is really important. So giving them some of the stats and reasons to believe is really important. He didn't really need that because he was already on board. But specific actions we've taken within the organisation. So we have implemented, we've just renewed it actually, a subscription to the Calm app for every employee in the UK. So we have access to the premium version of Calm. I'm not incentivized by Calm at all. Other apps are available. We've just negotiated 3 years. People will always have access to that. So that has all kinds of meditation and soundscapes, etc. physical workouts as well, if you want yoga or things like that, bedtime stories for kids and for you to fall asleep to, which I have tried to use on my daughter to varying levels of success. But that's a really key invest, and it shows investment in people's well-being mentally. Also, we've just finished completing training with Point 3 wellbeing with our line managers. So over 80 line managers within our organisation have now been trained on mental health awareness training. So going through some of the key things that people need to watch out for and be aware of to make sure they support their teams better. And we've had some fantastic feedback on that. The third thing we've done is actually done a course again with Point 3 Wellbeing for mental health first aiders, of which I was lucky enough to be on that course. So we now have not only physical first aiders, we also have mental health first aiders, which is critical. We're just working out the next steps in how to roll that out to the business and make people available, whilst also obviously managing, your day-to-day job, because we have to have that balance within the organisation. So, I mean, that's just a snapshot. There's so much more to come, and there's a lot more we really felt that it was really important to go top down and make sure that we had the key leaders in our business, making sure that they were advocates for mental health, and the feedback and the changes in behaviour and the understanding has been phenomenal. And it really, really is. It's fantastic to see. I mean, the biggest thing I took away was listening more, and listening and asking twice, and listening to people's responses rather than talking or injecting my own opinion or my own thoughts or how I've experienced things into the equation. So it's definitely a journey, and it's very much a long-term commitment at Electrolux.
But it sounds like at Electrolux there's some fantastic initiatives that are being rolled out. And I think the fact that you're obviously seeing the value of getting senior leaders and managers to look at their people within their teams as just that, as humans, as people, because that will support their performance and, of course, well, productivity, motivation and energy in the workplace. So I think that's really, really interesting. It sounds like you guys are on a fantastic journey, and it's been an awesome opportunity to get to support you guys over there. Kat, I'm going to throw a question just over to you, just with regards to obviously senior leaders in action. There's an interesting bit of research that you mentioned the other day on the importance of sleep in leaders and managers. Anything you could allude to on that? Yeah, sure. So leaders are human beings too, meaning they need sleep, right? We all need sleep. How much and when, that's different, and how well we sleep, that differs, but we all need sleep. It's a basic human need, like eating and drinking. And I think leaders, for different reasons, may forget that they need good quality sleep, and also that their behavior, their mental state, their emotional balance, all of that is also impacted by sleep or lack of sleep. So, if they don't get enough sleep, their performance, will dip. Now, the reason I think that, or the double whammy that can come when a leader is sleep deprived, is not only that his or her performance is dipping, but it's also their behavior towards their teams, the members of staff. And what research there has shown that the quality of sleep is related to the leadership behavior on that day or the following day, right? It doesn't mean that, you are always a bad leader. It's just after a poor night, then the incidence of abusive supervision, they go up. And that, of course, in the long term, then has an impact on the team. They are not feeling well. They don't want to engage. They don't feel enthusiastic. So their performance drop, or they may leave the company altogether. So there's really this double whammy of sleep. If leaders, don't sleep well. And so I think that's maybe also where there's a bit of work to be done to educate leaders on the importance of their sleep for themselves and the people around them.
Absolutely. It's an interesting point, Kat, because one thing I will always do with my team is certainly say, if I've not had a great night's sleep, just take myself away and say, just to let you know, I'm going to just be a bit quiet for the next couple of hours, because I've not had a great one. I just need to reset and get myself together and make sure that I'm giving you the best as well. And that dialogue is really important.
Yeah, that's a real role model, right? That's saying, hey, I notice my sort of limits when I'm sort of not as balanced. And so I'm just stepping back, and you communicate that with them so they know, oh, that's what's going on. But also they probably hopefully feel empowered to do the same when they are not feeling well for whatever reason. I think that's a fantastic, role model.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting. I think the leaders reminding themselves at times that they don't have to be robots. They are humans as well. Not everything's going to go according to plan. And then showing that little bit of vulnerability, saying, I've not had a great night's sleep. And you know what? I'm going to take a step back. That's an amazing role model kind of behavior. But it will enable then people within the organization to feel like they don't have to be perfect, that they can also not have a great night's sleep, maybe show up to work not feeling the most positive because they've not had a good night's sleep. So it's been really interesting kind of discussing kind of some of the business initiatives that you guys at Electrolux have done. And I think it's also worth just noting that these things can be really small, really little things as well. And so some of the ones that we absolutely love hearing about kind of from point 3, when we get the opportunity to speak to other businesses, are those really little but quite often kind of scheduled special events, those small pick-me-ups. These might be something like an in-house barista, or something like maybe a massage station or something along those lines. We also love some of these other ones, such as kind of stand-up meetings and no meeting Fridays, these little initiatives that you can do that pick up the energy within your team. And then one of the ones that we at point 3 love doing when we're feeling a little bit low and we need that injection of energy is we like to dance it out. So we'll take an opportunity to share a song, and we will make ourselves look a little bit silly, pretty ridiculous, and dance it out to a song. So we have obviously discussed what are those things that we can do, or kind of on that individual level, to kind of try and move through languishing as much as possible and to find that flow state, those well-being non-negotiables. And these are, of course, those kind of small routines and habits that we can look to build into our days that support us, particularly as the winter months kind of do come in. So a quick question for you, Kat. In order to, one of the key ways to maintain kind of motivation and productivity is to spend time engaging in those things that make us feel good, those well-being non-negotiables. Now, they will, of course, be individual to each of us, but there are, of course, a few common truths. Now, are you able to share some of those things, particularly when it comes to kind of the sleep side of things?
Healthy sleep habits. One would be, for example, going for a morning walk, right? Because then your clock knows, okay, now day has started. And naturally, when it then gets dim or dark later on in the day, the clock knows, okay, so now it's evening or nighttime. And related to that, having regular sleep times, right? Regular bedtime, regular wake up time. Now, it won't happen every night. And Kate, you having a 2-year-old, we can't control everything. But some things are within our control. And so just aiming, to be in bed at the normal bedtime most of the weeknights, or getting up on time on the weekend. I think that's a first step. And then, of course, being aware of what you eat, when you eat. Caffeine or a heavy meal late at night, never helpful for sleep. But then I think the other part is, and that may come back to actually the 3 non-negotiables, is this doing something that matters to you, a sense of purpose or me time. Kate, you mentioned that earlier on, something that fulfills you, gives you meaning, right? And do something like that every day, no matter how small. That could just be reading a page of your, currently the favorite book that you have, or it's the cup of coffee in the morning, whatever that might be. Could even be watching a Netflix series as in an episode, probably not the whole one. But doing something you enjoy, like I say, to give you that feel good, I've done something here. Because a happy brain is a sleepy brain. And so that can then also help with sleeping at night.
I love how interconnected all of these things are. We talk about to support our sleep, the foundational pillar of well-being, in kind of certainly my opinion, I feel so good after a good night's sleep. is we move. We feed the gut to support our mood. Maybe we inject some mindfulness, we inject some purpose into our life. We talked about those relationships and other things. These are all really, really small things that we can do kind of on a daily basis to kind of support ourselves. And I guess as we move into the Christmas period as well, kind of a few other things that I've personally found over the past couple of years have really supported me is to embrace things like JOMO rather than FOMO. So the joy of missing out rather than the fear of missing out, because actually that can be a real energy drainer if we're not careful. But also reminding ourselves that it's okay not to be okay. And sometimes when we do feel that well, we should actually listen to that and consider where that's coming from. And kind of in line with your question, Kate, that as a manager, you like to ask twice. And I'm sure you do that at home as well. But we can also do that with ourselves. And I think just remembering to kind of go easy on ourselves. It's cold, it's dark. Let's take that pressure off to an extent. And for me, one of the things that I love doing, and I'm doing it right now actually, is I like to light a little candle. It just makes me feel that little bit more energized. It's a tiny little thing. It's very easy to do. So those are one of kind of the other things that I'm doing at the moment to kind of support myself. Kate, any final thoughts from your end, just with regards to anything on top of that?
I think it's just that point of just understanding that people are human and being respectful of it. People also have different times of day they're more productive, because productivity, we always do end of year objectives and we do end of year reviews, and then we're looking at objectives and everything all in December. And actually, I think some of that is to create the purpose for the coming year, but actually that can create pressure and all of those things. But making sure that we're just having that human contact and connection with people, knowing when people work best, how people work best, and just optimizing your management style sometimes to those people. And also being forgiving if people go, do you know what, I'm really struggling today. And my team constantly tell me, I'm actually having a bit of an off day, just to let you know. And that constant communication is really important. And just taking me time is so important. As a new mum, that's the biggest thing for me.
That is some very sound advice. Well, thank you both. A huge thank you to you both for taking the time, the energy, and to provide all of this amazing insight. So really do appreciate you kind of joining our conversation on Walk the Talk. And I'm sure many people can take some little nuggets out of this conversation. So this was our final Walk the Talk for 2021. So thank you to all who've tuned in to the webcast live or listened to the recordings afterwards. We really hope you've enjoyed these conversations as much as we have. Now, our first Walk the Talk of 2022 promises to be an exciting one. It will be focused on and shining a light on Generation Z. So for many businesses, their graduate cohorts will be made up of this generation of young talent. But how much do we actually know about them and how to support them? Well, at point 3, not as much as we would like. So we're bringing in some experts to help us learn more, and we hope you will join us. That episode will be airing live on Wednesday, the 26th of January at 10 a.m. But for the time being, that wraps Walk the Talk for 2021. So be well, be happy, be you,